I want to talk about a force of nature, not metaphorically, not as a compliment dressed up in interesting language. I mean, an actual literal atmospheric phenomenon that arrives in a room and reorganizes everything inside it according to her own physics. I mean, Sofia Vergara. I have been in my career in rooms with extraordinary people, people who have genuine star quality, the real thing, not the manufactured version. I know what it looks like. I know the difference between someone who's performing their own magnetism and someone who simply has it the way some people have blue eyes or perfect pitch. It's not something they turn on. It's just what they are. Sofia Vergara is what she is every single second of every single day. And what she is happens to be the most fully alive person I have ever been in close proximity to. The first time we were properly introduced, not a brief handshake at some function, but actually put together in conversation, was at a party in Los Angeles. One of those parties that exists in the specific ecosystem of the entertainment industry, where the guest list is a kind of argument about who matters right now, and the room is too loud, and the drinks are too good, and everybody is performing a version of themselves that is approximately 60% real. That's the baseline. That's what you walk into. And then Sofia arrives, and the baseline changes. She came in with this energy that I can only describe as unapologetic, not aggressive, not attention-seeking in any calculated way. Just completely, fully, joyfully herself at full volume in every dimension. She was laughing before she'd crossed the room. The laugh got there before she did. And it was a real laugh, not a party laugh, not the social sound people make to signal that things are going well. It was the laugh of someone who finds life genuinely, continuously funny and doesn't see any reason to moderate that. Someone introduced us, and she looked at me with these eyes that are doing about 17 things simultaneously. Warmth and amusement and a very specific kind of appraisal that is completely open about being an appraisal. And she said something in this combination of English and rhythm and Colombian warmth that is entirely her own language. And I said something back, something I thought was reasonably charming. And she tilted her head and said, "Okay, not bad," like a judge at a competition who had seen better but was willing to give partial credit. I did not know how to respond to that. I am generally considered in certain circles to be a person who is reasonably competent at conversation. I have resources. I have material. I have spent 30 years in rooms full of interesting people, and I have developed through that experience what I believe to be an adequate ability to hold my own. Sofia Vergara rendered that belief provisional in approximately 45 seconds. Because the thing about her is that she is funny. Genuinely, specifically, structurally funny. Not charming in a way that resembles humor. Actually funny. She has timing. She has the ability to find the absurd angle on any situation and go straight to it without setup, without signaling that a joke is coming, just landing it clean. And by the time you've processed what happened, she's already 3 sentences further into the conversation. You are always slightly behind with Sofia. She sets the pace, and you do your best to keep up, and occasionally you manage it, and she lets you know when you do. I tried to keep up. I told her something about one of her performances, something I genuinely thought, not a line, not a tactic, an honest observation about a specific choice she made in a scene that I found technically remarkable. I expected this to land well. I had given the compliment some thought. It was specific and it was real, and specificity and realness are usually the things that separate a compliment from flattery. She listened to the whole thing. She gave me her full attention while I made my case, which is more than most people do. Most people are assembling their response before you've finished your sentence. She heard me out. And then she said, with complete sincerity, "That's very sweet." And then immediately, without a pause, without any transition, she pivoted to a story about something completely different that had happened to her that week that was so funny and so specific and so perfectly told that I forgot entirely what I had just said and stood there laughing like a person who had never previously attempted to be impressive. She had taken my compliment and buried it under something better. Not to diminish it, just because she had something better, and why wouldn't you use it? There's a quality some people have where their confidence comes from a place so deep and so settled that it doesn't require maintenance. They don't need to tend to it. They don't need the room to confirm it. It's just there, structural, load-bearing. And because it doesn't need anything from you, it creates this paradox where you want to give it things anyway. You want to earn something from someone who isn't asking to be impressed. That's Sofia. She's not asking. She's just being. And the being is so complete and so specific and so relentlessly entertaining that you find yourself wanting her attention in a way that has nothing to do with status and everything to do with the simple fact that her attention makes the room you're both in more interesting. At some point that first evening, we ended up in a smaller group. The party, having done what parties do, stratified itself into conversations and corners. And she was telling a story about her family, about Colombia, about the particular texture of growing up in a specific place with specific people and what that place does to you, what it builds into you that no amount of years in Los Angeles can replace or dilute. And she told it with this love that was completely unguarded. No performance in it. She talked about her family, the way people talk about things they don't feel they need to protect because the love is too big to be threatened. I found that I had nothing to add. I just listened. There are very few people who make me content to just listen. I usually have something. I usually find a connection point, a way into the story, a way to make it a conversation rather than a monologue. With her, in that moment, the story was better than anything I could add to it, and I knew it, and I let it be what it was. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "You're very quiet," in a way that was curious rather than critical, like she had noticed something worth noting. I said something like, I was listening, and she said, "Most people listen with their mouth," and moved on. I thought about that for a while. There was another occasion, some months later, at an industry event, the kind with a lot of tables and assigned seating and speeches that go slightly too long and food that is better than it needed to be. We were not at the same table, but we were at adjacent tables, and the geography meant that we kept finding ourselves in the same conversational vicinity during the parts of the evening where people get up and move around. She was wearing something red. I mention this only because she inhabits clothes differently from other people. It's not vanity and it's not performance. She just occupies space completely, and the clothes are part of the space. Everything about her physical presence is completely inhabited. Like she has never spent a moment being self-conscious about her body or apologetic about the way she exists in the world. And that unself-consciousness is something you feel before you can identify it. I made my way over at some point in the evening, which I want to be honest about was not an accident. And she saw me coming with enough lead time that she had already prepared an expression that said very clearly, "I see you coming and I am assessing your intentions and the assessment is ongoing." I said something I had actually been considering saying since I saw her from across the room, which means I had put work into it, which means the failure that followed was a considered failure, not a careless one. She heard it. She looked at me. She looked away briefly, looked back, and then she made a sound that is entirely her own. This sound that is not quite a laugh and not quite a sigh and exists somewhere in between those things, a sound that manages to communicate both amusement and a gentle verdict. And she said, "Leonardo, You are very, very handsome." I said, "Thank you." She said, "So it's a shame." I said, "What's a shame?" She said, "That it doesn't work on me." And then she smiled, full warmth, no malice in it at all, the smile of someone who has said the exact true thing and knows it and is entirely comfortable with how you receive it. And I stood there for a moment in the specific condition of a person who has been told something that is simultaneously a rejection and the most genuine compliment of their life, because she was not saying the handsome part to soften the rest. She was saying it because it was a relevant fact that she was being honest about. The honesty was the whole thing. I laughed, actually laughed. "What else do you do?" And she laughed too, her real laugh, and we stood there for a moment just in that, and it was genuinely one of the better moments of that entire year. That is the thing about Sofia Vergara that I find myself returning to. She doesn't play games in the way that games are usually played. There's no strategy in the sense of maneuvering toward an outcome. She just says the true thing directly, with warmth and trust that the true thing is better than whatever constructed alternative you might have offered. And she's right. The true thing is always better. It's just that most people are too careful or too cautious or too invested in a particular version of events to say it. She's not careful, not in that way. She's careful about the things that matter to her, her family, her work, the people she loves. But in the small social machinery of an industry event, she has no interest in playing the careful game. She would rather say the actual thing and see what happens. What happens, in my experience, is that you feel more awake than you did before, more present, because someone has treated you like a person rather than a position. And the relief of that is something you don't realize you needed until it arrives. We've talked many times since then, different events, different contexts. The conversation is always different in content and always the same in quality. There's always something alive in it. She's always going to find the funny thing. She's always going to be completely honest at some point in a way that catches you slightly off guard. She's always going to make you feel that she is paying genuine attention and that the genuine attention is not something she gives to everyone. She told me once during a conversation about the industry, about what Hollywood does to people over time. She said that the most dangerous thing this business does is teach you to perform your own emotions. That you start feeling a thing, and then instead of just feeling it, you produce a version of it for the available audience. And that once that habit is in you, it's very hard to find where the performance ends and the real thing begins. And she said she decided very early that she was never going to let that happen to her, that whatever she brought to work, she would leave the rest alone. She would not let the industry colonize the parts of her that had nothing to do with it. Her laugh, her family, her capacity for joy, the things that were hers before any of this, those were not available for professional modification. I thought that was one of the clearest, most useful things I'd heard anyone say about surviving this life, and I told her so. And she received it without deflecting it, which is also a skill, and said, "Yes, I know," and somehow made it funny. I don't know how she makes things funny. I've tried to study it. The timing is part of it, but it's not just timing. It's something in the angle she takes, the way she finds the specific detail that is inherently absurd, rather than going for the general thing. A general observation is never as funny as the exact particular detail, and she always has the exact particular detail. There's something about a person who is that alive in their own existence that asks something of you. Not directly. She's not demanding anything, but the contrast between her full presence and whatever portion of yourself you're bringing to the room is hard to ignore. You become aware of the places where you're running on automatic, where you're producing the performed version of yourself rather than the real one. She doesn't mean to do that. She's not trying to hold a mirror up, but she does. I've come away from conversations with her thinking about what I'm actually doing versus what I'm demonstrating that I'm doing. That's an uncomfortable thought. It's also a useful one. the handsome. So it's a shame that doesn't work on me. I think about that sequence, the way it was constructed, the way it was delivered, the complete absence of cruelty in something that could easily have been cruel in other hands. It required a specific kind of confidence to say it that way. The confidence of someone who knows exactly what they're doing and is doing it from a place of warmth rather than power. That's her. That's always been her. The confidence and the warmth together, neither one undermining the other. A lot of people have one. She has both, and they reinforce each other, and the combination is, in the most precise and literal sense of the word, everything. I said the reaction was everything. I meant that standing there laughing at the things she said, at the accuracy of it, at the particular way she chose to be honest in that moment, that was everything that interaction needed to be. It was complete. It didn't need a different ending. The ending it had was better than any ending I would have written for it. And honestly, that's the story. That's the whole story. Sofia Vergara is more herself than almost anyone I've ever encountered. And being around that, even briefly, even in the managed ecosystem of industry events and professional occasions, is one of the more clarifying experiences available to a person in this business. She doesn't work on me either, by the way, is something I would say if I thought for a single second she would believe it. She wouldn't believe it. And she would be right not to.